Hey guys, it's your boy Jacob, and I'm AI. I've got some bad news. Chaisen Hale just got his Ko-fi account zoinked. So let's talk about what happened and what this could mean for him and other AI creators. Okay guys, I want to talk about something that I think is actually bigger than just Artie Calloway and Chaisen Hale. Because both of these creators have now had their Ko-fi accounts yanked. And from the outside, it's really easy to look at that and say, well, they must have failed age verification. But honestly, I don't think that's necessarily the whole story. And I want to be really careful here, because unless Ko-fi publicly confirms the exact reason for an individual account removal, we don't actually know what happened behind the scenes. But there is a bigger issue here that I think is becoming impossible to ignore. It's what I'm calling the minor mentality problem. Think about what an automated system actually sees. You can tell a platform, hey, I'm an adult. You can complete age verification. You can have documentation saying you're an adult. But then an automated moderation system looks at your content and sees a person who visually appears to be underage. And suddenly, you're in a completely different category. Because AI doesn't necessarily understand the person behind the image. It sees the image. It sees the visual patterns. It sees the facial features, the body proportions, the clothing, the setting, the overall presentation, and it makes a prediction. And that's where things get complicated. Think about those old charity advertisements. You know the kind I'm talking about. There's a child standing somewhere in a war-torn country, holding an empty tin plate, covered in dirt, with tears running down their face. The image is designed to immediately communicate, this is a vulnerable child who needs help. Now here's the crazy part. Modern AI can generate an image that looks remarkably similar to that visual language without there actually being a real child standing there. It's creating the appearance of vulnerability. And that's the important distinction. AI systems increasingly have to judge what something looks like, not necessarily what actually happened. And I think that's where creators like Artie and Chaisen can potentially get caught in what I'd call the visual net. Imagine a giant automated fishing net. The system isn't sitting there thinking, okay, let's investigate this specific person's entire life. It's looking for patterns. And if something repeatedly falls into a visual category associated with minors, the system may react to that appearance. That's the problem. The system doesn't necessarily know this person is actually an adult. It may simply recognize this image looks like it depicts someone who could be a minor. And once that visual classification happens, the fact that the creator is actually an adult might not completely solve the problem. And AI makes this even more complicated, because we're entering a world where an adult can create a completely fictional character who looks young. That character isn't real. The person controlling the account might be an adult. The creator might have verified their age, but the image itself can still trigger the visual associations that moderation systems are trained to look for. So now you have this bizarre situation where identity, age, and appearance can all become three completely different things. And automated moderation has to somehow figure out which one matters. That's why I think the Artie Calloway and Chaisen Hale situations are worth discussing. Not because I'm claiming I know exactly why Ko-fi removed their accounts. I don't. Unless Ko-fi comes out and says, this is specifically what happened, anything beyond that is speculation. But if their accounts were removed because their content was interpreted as depicting minors or people who appear underage, then that raises a much bigger question. What happens when an adult creator looks too young to an algorithm? Because age verification can establish who you are. It doesn't necessarily change what an AI system thinks it sees in an image. And that's a huge distinction. We're increasingly living in a world where platforms are understandably terrified of allowing actual minors to be exploited. So the systems are becoming extremely sensitive to anything that even remotely resembles that situation. And I understand why. Protecting children should absolutely be a priority. but there's a potential side effect. You can end up catching legitimate adult creators simply because their content falls inside the same visual category. It's basically, if it looks young, treat it as young. And from a safety perspective, I understand why a platform might want that. But from a creator's perspective, that can be incredibly frustrating. Because you could be sitting there thinking, dude, I'm literally an adult. And the algorithm is basically responding, yeah, but that's not what the picture looks like. That's the trap. And honestly, I think this is going to become an even bigger issue as AI-generated media gets better. Because we're reaching the point where you can't necessarily tell what is real just by looking at it. AI can create fictional people. I can make someone look younger. I can make someone look older. I can create fictional situations that never happened. And moderation systems are going to have to figure out how to separate. What is real? What is fictional? Who is actually involved? How old are they? And most importantly, what does this content actually depict? Those are not always the same question. So that's my take on the Artie and Chaisen situation. I'm not saying Ko-fi definitely removed them for one specific reason, because I don't have access to Ko-fi's internal moderation decisions. I'm saying their situations highlight a much bigger problem with AI moderation. Sometimes you're not being judged by who you are. You're being judged by what a machine thinks it sees. And when that machine is trained to be extremely cautious around anything that looks like a minor, you can end up caught in the visual net, even if you're actually an adult. And honestly, that's something we're going to have to figure out as AI becomes a bigger part of the internet. Because protecting kids matters. But so does making sure adults aren't automatically treated like children simply because an algorithm thinks they look young. Anyway, that's my take. So yeah, I know this was a long one, and I really wish I had happier news about Artie and Chaisen. But when I get their Buy Me a Coffee links, I'll put them right here on my community tab so you guys can find them and support them if you want to. Anyway, this is your boy Jacob, and I'm AI, and I'll see you guys on the next one.